The moment Todd said those words, it was as if the floor disappeared beneath me. "I'm leaving you," he repeated with no hint of emotion. "My lover is pregnant. She's 20 and I'm moving in with her." His voice was steady, like this was just another business decision. But for me, it felt like my entire life was shattering. We had been married for 15 years. We built a company, a life, everything together. How could he discard all of that for some fleeting affair? The weight of his words took time to sink in. I knew our marriage wasn't perfect anymore, but I never expected it to end this way. Even worse, he wasn't asking for my opinion. He was simply informing me of his decision. "You'll get alimony," he added, as if that would make it better. He wanted me out of our home, but oddly enough, he wanted me to continue working at the company. I sat in silence, stunned by the betrayal. As I tried to absorb Todd's callous words, memories of our early years flooded back. We had been inseparable back then, two fresh college graduates, full of dreams but broke, with no real prospects. We both took up part-time jobs just to make ends meet, clinging to the hope that one day we'd build something bigger together. It was Todd's idea to start the IT company. His passion and drive were contagious, and I followed him without hesitation. We worked tirelessly, sometimes through the night, just to make our vision a reality. When the business finally took off, it felt like the culmination of all our sacrifices. But now, as Todd sat there talking about a 20-year-old girl, I wondered when exactly it had all started to fall apart. Was it the success that changed him? Or was it something deeper, something that had been lurking beneath the surface all along? I couldn't tell anymore. In the months leading up to this conversation, the cracks in our marriage had grown wider, but I had chosen to ignore them. Todd had become more distant, his work events becoming more frequent, and the time we spent together had dwindled to almost nothing. I had noticed the subtle changes, how he stopped talking about the future, how he avoided eye contact when we did manage to speak. Deep down, I had known something was wrong, but I hadn't wanted to face it. I told myself he was just busy with work, that he still cared about us, about me. But now, it was clear that Todd had moved on long before this conversation. He had been planning this escape, carefully laying the groundwork while I was left in the dark. And now, he expected me to just walk away without a fight, to accept his terms as if I were nothing more than an obstacle in his new life. But I wasn't ready to let go that easily. As Todd continued to speak, listing out the terms of our divorce like a lawyer at a negotiation, I felt a fire ignite inside me. He thought he had the upper hand, that I would just roll over and agree to his demands. But he didn't know me as well as he thought. I wasn't the same naive girl who had followed him into this business all those years ago. I had grown stronger, smarter, and now I had something he didn't: leverage. Todd had underestimated me, and that was his first mistake. I knew the ins and outs of our company, had built relationships with our employees, and handled the public relations that had made us a household name. He might think he didn't need me anymore, but he was wrong. I decided then and there that I wouldn't go down quietly. If Todd wanted to throw me out of our home, out of the company we had built together, he was in for a rude awakening. Just as I was beginning to form a plan, there was a knock at my office door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I assumed it was one of the assistants. But when I opened the door, I came face to face with a young woman who looked barely old enough to vote. It took me a moment to recognize her. Claire, the woman Todd had left me for. She stood there nervously, wringing her hands like a child caught in a lie. "I need to talk to you," she said softly, her voice trembling. I wanted to slam the door in her face, to scream at her for what she had done. But something in her expression stopped me. She looked scared, almost as if she didn't want to be there. Reluctantly, I let her in, though every fiber of my being screamed against it. I didn't know why she was here, but I knew it couldn't be good. She was the last person I wanted to see, yet here she was, standing in my office like a harbinger of doom. Claire wasted no time getting to the point. "I didn't know about you," she blurted out, tears already forming in her eyes. "Todd told me you two were separated. He said you had agreed to a divorce months ago." I stared at her, my anger simmering beneath the surface. Was she serious? Did she really think I would believe that? But as she continued, her words began to make sense in a twisted way. Todd had been playing both of us. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice breaking, "and I don't know what to do." For a moment, swing. I felt a flicker of pity for her. She was young, naive, and clearly had no idea what kind of man she had gotten involved with. Todd had lied to her just as easily as he had lied to me, spinning a web of deceit to get what he wanted. But as much as I wanted to blame her, the real villain here was Todd. He had betrayed us both, using Claire to fuel his ego while discarding me like old baggage. As Claire sat there sobbing, she revealed something that caught my attention. "Todd gave me access to his bank accounts," she said quietly, wiping away her tears. "He said it was for the baby, to make sure we were taken care of. But I think he's hiding something." My heart skipped a beat. This was it, the leverage I needed. Todd had been funneling money into secret accounts, thinking no one would notice. But now, Claire had unknowingly handed me the key to his downfall. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Claire looked up at me, her eyes filled with fear. "Because I don't trust him," she whispered. "And I don't want to be stuck in this mess any longer. I thought, maybe you could help me." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the scenario I had imagined. But now that I had this information, I realized that Todd wasn't just betraying me emotionally. He was betraying me financially as well. And that changed everything. Despite the bitterness that I felt toward Claire, I realized we were both victims in Todd's elaborate scheme. It didn't make me like her anymore, but it made me see her differently. She was just as trapped as I was. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of her confession hanging between us. And then, slowly, a plan began to form in my mind. I wasn't going to let Todd get away with this, not after everything he had done. "All right," I said finally, my voice firm. "Here's what we're going to do." Claire looked at me, wide-eyed and unsure, but I could see the desperation in her expression. She had no one else to turn to, and despite everything, I needed her. Together, we were going to take Todd down. I explained my plan in careful detail, and by the end of our conversation, Claire's tears had dried. She wasn't just a scared girl anymore, she was an accomplice. The thought of working with her left a bitter taste in my mouth, but if it meant getting back at Todd, I was willing to do whatever it took. Over the next few days, Claire and I put our plan into action. It wasn't easy working alongside the woman who had torn my marriage apart, but we had a common goal: to expose Todd for the liar he was. Claire gave me access to the bank accounts Todd had opened in her name, and together we began gathering evidence of his financial misconduct. I knew that if we could prove Todd had been siphoning money from the company, we would have the leverage we needed to bring him down. I kept my distance from Todd during this time, pretending to go along with his plans for a peaceful divorce. He had no idea what was coming. Every night, I reviewed the documents Claire had given me, piecing together the puzzle of Todd's deception. The more I uncovered, the angrier I became. He had been planning this for years, carefully orchestrating his exit while leaving me with nothing. But what Todd didn't realize was that I wasn't going to let him win. The day finally came when everything was ready. I had the evidence, the documents, and Claire by my side. Todd was in for the shock of his life. We met in the office, the same place where he had casually informed me of his plans to leave. But this time, I was in control. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. Todd looked up from his desk, clearly annoyed. "I thought we already discussed everything," he said, his tone dismissive. "This won't take long," I replied, sliding the stack of documents across the desk. Todd picked them up, his brow furrowing as he scanned the pages, and then his face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice rising in panic. "This," I said calmly, "is proof of everything you've been hiding. The secret accounts, the money you've been siphoning from the company, the lies you've told." Todd's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages, realization dawning on his face. He was trapped. Todd tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. He had been caught red-handed, and there was no way out. I watched as the panic spread across his face, his confident facade crumbling before my eyes. "You can't do this," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. "I can, and I am," I replied coldly. "You thought you could leave me with nothing, that I would just quietly walk away. But you underestimated me, Todd, and now you're going to pay the price." Claire stood beside me, silent but resolute. Together, we had built an airtight case against him. There was no escaping the consequences of his actions. Todd's empire was about to come crashing down, component placement, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As I watched him unravel, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. For years, I had stood by his side, supporting him, believing in him. But now, I was taking back control of my life, and Todd was about to lose everything. In the days that followed, Todd's world fell apart. The company he had so carefully built was in shambles, his reputation destroyed. News of his financial misconduct spread quickly, and soon, he was facing legal action. Employees who had once respected him turned their backs, and clients withdrew their support. Claire and I filed for divorce, splitting Todd's assets between us. It wasn't about the money, it was about reclaiming what was rightfully ours. Todd was left with nothing but the consequences of his own greed. As for me, I finally felt free. Free from the lies, the manipulation, and the betrayal. I had spent years living in Todd's shadow, but now I was ready to step into the light. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never let anyone take advantage of me again. Todd had thought he could break me, but in the end, I was the one who came out stronger.